Hey everyone, welcome to another BTM screencast, and again, another masonry screencast, but with carpentry. So in the last one, we talked about resilient tile. This one, we're talking about ceramic tile, which I brought up last time. So let's get into more detail on this. So ceramic tile is used to cover floors and walls in restrooms, baths, showers, and other high moisture areas. So you can see this in kitchens, and in other instances, you can see it all throughout a house. It comes down to preference. So this is applied using a thin set, which is it's a mortar, um, or in an organic adhesive. So for us, we're going to be using a thin set. So here's an idea of some of the applications of tile. So you can see in here, they have the tile on the floor of the shower, as well as part of the surround, right? And there's even a nice little seat in the shower, which is kind of cool. So ceramic tile comes in a variety of shapes and sizes, colors, and patterns. So really, it's almost limitless with the types of colors, the designs, some of the shapes. The most common are a 1/4 inch thick and 4 to 6 inch squares. Special pieces such as base, caps, and inside and outside corners are used. So I would say that this is limited to your vertical applications for the 4 and 6 inch squares. On the floors, you're going to see much bigger ones. So here we have a wall filled with ceramic tile. So you can see that we have our base tile here, and this has a little flare on the end, right? Well, you can see that the field tiles are nice and flat. The bottom here has a little flare to it. When, when we come up here, you can see that we have our inside corners and our caps. So the corners are always smaller, and then the caps are the full size that we're going to have here. So a 2x6 cap, 2x2 corner, and then our 4x4 base and field tiles. So to prepare your wall, use a cement board for backing when tile will become wet daily. So this would be in a bathroom area, a kitchen area, stuff like that, especially the bathroom. Otherwise, water-resistant drywall may be used. So again, in the kitchen area where it may not be wet every single day. Some kitchens, I guess it would depend if it's commercial or if it's in your house. Area constraints. Tiles should overlap the lip of tubs and be applied down to the shower floor. Right, this makes sense because you don't want a gap where water can get in. Tiles should be installed 6 inches above the rim of tubs, and tiles should be 6 feet above shower floor or 6 inches above the shower head. This is a good review. Maybe I'll ask you guys what the shower head should be set at because I know we went over that last year. So here we have an example of what this looks like in a shower. Don't get too carried away with this. We're going to be doing mostly the horizontal or the floor applications for tile. So some area constraints, border tiles are those that fit to the corners and edges of the tiled area. So here we have the border tiles. Now you can see that this is laid out really nice. So the field tiles, when you look at it, it's aesthetically pleasing, right? You don't want a fall off in one area. And if this is a half or a third of a tile, you don't want a 2/3 tile and then it to start out. It doesn't look good. So to make this more aesthetically pleasing, look at it, split it, lay it out accordingly. When you calculate border tiles, measure the width of the wall, change the measurement to inches, right? This is important because it makes it easier to lay out. Divide it by the width of a tile. Add the width of a tile to the remainder. Divide by 2 to find the width of the border tiles. So again, all we're doing is splitting the difference. And we're going to go over this more. I'm not going to go into too much detail in here. So here's an example. It's a textbook example. I'll give you better examples in the lab. For the tile layout, so make sure that it's level, plumb, and square. Level, plumb, and square. This sounds familiar. Level, plumb, and square. Floor lines should be parallel to the most visible wall. So in your booths, you're going to be able to pick which one you want to run parallel with. Wall tiles may be installed against a temporary attached straight edge. So the walls are going to be a little different. And if you want to get into it and you're doing really well with the floor tiles, then we can start talking about the wall tiles. When you go to apply the tile, so apply the adhesive to the surface with a notch trowel. We have the notch trowels, and again, the adhesive that we're using is going to be a thin set. Tiles installed on the back wall first. So in a wall application where it's vertical, you will use more of an adhesive. The tiles are smaller, so they weigh less. Press the tile firmly into position. Clean any adhesive that oozes out between tiles. This is important, right? You don't want to be sloppy with it. This makes it much more difficult once you go to grout and when you have to clean it, because then you have to scrape this stuff off after it hardens. Most of the adhesives that you'd use for a vertical application clean off relatively easy when they're wet. When they're not, it becomes a pain to try to clean everything off. Install from guidelines in a pyramid extended upward and outward. So you just kind of want to build up and then out. Here we have someone. This is the notched trowel that you're going to be using. And you can see that this is the thin set that they have down. And the notched trowel creates this pattern, which helps the tile adhere better. As I mentioned before, we're going to be using tile spacers, and here we have a tile spacer, and we have this person setting a tile right here. When you cut border tiles, tile saws can be used to cut all types of tile, and they're cool because they have water run to them, so there's not really too much dust. It's more of like a spray, but it's easy to clean. It's easy to contain as compared to if it were just dust blowing everywhere. The hand-operated ceramic tile cutters are used on thin wall tile. We will be using the hand-operated ones. A nibbler is used to make small or irregular cuts in all tile. So we're not going to have to worry about a nibbler because the applications that we're using are pretty straightforward. We're not going to have to cut circles. We're not going to have to notch out around pipes or anything like that. So here's a tile saw. You can see that it's run with water, and this really helps cut down on the dust. This is one of the hand tile cutters. We have ones very similar to this in the lab. So there's a wheel on here that you score the surface of the tile, just back and forth a couple of times. Then you actually take this handle, press it down, and it snaps the tile. If you scored it right, it gives you a nice clean cut. This is the nibbler. So again, we're not going to have to worry about any of this. You guys aren't going to have to cut a radius of any kind. We're not going to be going around pipes or anything like that. So when you're grouting, grouting is the finishing of the tile. So I'm sure you've seen it's like the lines in between. Grout comes in powder form and mixed with water to create a paste. Spread in the gaps with a rubber trowel, and after the grout sets slightly, you can point the wall tile to remove the excess grout and clean 4 tiles by repetitively wiping with a wet sponge. So we will be doing this. You don't want a soaking wet sponge, and you want to make sure that the surface is pretty well cleaned. Again, because if you let the grout set and you don't clean it, you just let it there, 1, it looks sloppy. 2, it creates an absolute nightmare to try to clean. It saves so much time just by keeping it clean as you go. So the last step is done with a buffing rag. So you'll see after you set your tile and you grout it, and no matter how well you sponge it off, there's going to be like a slight haze on it. So that slight haze is what we're going to do with the buffing rag, and it almost polishes it, cleans it up real nice. So after about 3 weeks, you can apply a grout sealer to it. We're not going to do that here. It's not necessary, but the grout sealer is nice because it really helps control some of the things that might stain it. Keeps it looking fresh, keeps it looking clean. So it's a good thing to do if you're doing this on your own time. In conclusion, tiles come in various sizes, colors, shapes, and patterns. The ones that we have here they're pretty plain vanilla. They're 12 by 12s and like a beige color from Home Depot, but they're good because you're going to learn how to set them, and the same application will be the same. Adhesive is applied with a trowel. In this case, we're going to be using a notch trowel to apply thin set. Tile are applied to guidelines, and grout fills gaps. And always remember, with the grout, clean it. The same with the thin set. You're going to see if you have too much down and that pops out in between the joints, clean it. Get it clean. If not, it's a nightmare and you can deal with it. All right, that's it, and see you next time.